What's up, y'all? I am just giving y'all an update on the bill that that I testified on behalf here today, as well as some updates on a few other bills. So Senate Bill 163 was our testimony, and we were proponents or in favor of this bill passing. What it did was it denounced and also I guess put into place policy to regulate the dehumanization and also the discrimination of people wearing their hair in a natural state while in the workplace. So this bill is the fourth year that we've brought forth this bill. Each year before today, the bill was passed to the it was decided that bill would then go to the 41st day of legislature. And so if you're unfamiliar with what that means, there can only be 40 days in the legislature. And so the 41st day effectively ends any discussion and conversation pertaining to the proposed policy or proposed bill. So yet again this year we had no really progress, if you will. Each year we change a few items based on things that the legislature or legislators have said, who have said on the committee. And so this year was no different. Senator Nessebar once again has been the initiator of the bill, and we are very grateful that he continues to stand as an ally in our corner. This year was actually my first year being able to go up to lobby. I did so on behalf of the NAACP, and it was quite an eye-opening experience on several levels. So I'll come back to that. Let me finish my train of thought. So this particular bill, while all of them seem to be disheartening, because quite honestly, not one bill that I've been a part of has successfully passed the committee and been presented onto the floor of either the Senate or the House. They've all been effectively dead. And most of the bills, if not all of the bills, have been dealing with issues of either civil rights or human rights. But this particular bill was disheartening because this is a testimony that I gave in person versus online, of course, and I opened myself up to be a little bit more vulnerable this time. There were questions. Again, like, I was able to lobby on behalf of this bill. I talked with several senators who were also either on the committee, or state senators who might have had ties with other senators in opposition of the bill, trying to sway them in many different ways. And as I mentioned earlier, lobbying is quite different, but particularly when you're the only black face walking around the state capitol. All eyes are on you, but nobody wants to necessarily approach you unless they know you. And so luckily, living in Pierre for 3.5 years, I knew several faces walking around the building. And just being involved in the work, I also knew some people that I could really rely on, and having conversations with those individuals. So I didn't look, too awkward, or it wasn't, too uncomfortable, if you will. But those are not the people that I was trying to sway. I was trying to sway those other individuals on voting for this particular bill. And when I tell you, those people avoided conversation with me like I had some type of disease. Like the old folks say, they avoided me like the plague. They didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to talk about the bill. And that carried over into the testimony of the committee. It was definitely not a welcoming environment, which we know, that's not a surprise, of course. But you testify, you open yourself up for questions, you open yourself up for discussion, which is what this democratic process is supposed to be about. And there was no conversation. no conversation whatsoever. I gave the testimony, I gave some history. I even gave a personal testimony of an individual that I was able to talk to and get their story, along with what has affected them, their family, their kids, how they grew up, all of the things, right? All of the things that I can think of. I kind of piece all of the things together from previous years and previous discussions, and that still didn't work. Not a single question was asked. Not a single piece of discussion was had, not even between themselves. But very quietly, someone said that they motioned to move this to the 41st day. And then very loudly, you heard a second. And there was a very disheartened nay when they came to vote, a very disheartened nay from Senator Nessebar. But everyone else seemed to have kind of this energy about them. And it wasn't an energy that was there before, right? So that energy before was one of, let me sit, let me listen. And then when I started to speak, you could see them really disengage in what I had to say. And especially when Senator Nessebar started to speak, the level of disrespect that particular committee gave Senator Nessebar, with the giggling behind his back, with the deep sighs every time he spoke up in favor of some legislation. It wasn't welcoming for citizens, but it definitely wasn't welcoming for other legislators. It was a hostile environment. Without a doubt, it was a hostile environment. And so needless to say, the bill was not passed. It was sent to the 41st day, just as the other bills. So afterwards, I went up to several of the state senators who sat on the committee, and I asked them, hey, what would it take? What type of conversation would it take for us to at least move this onto the floor so that we can have a broader discussion about what this means and the discrimination? Because in years past, we've brought several individuals to testify in person. We've had several individuals testify online. We've had Dove come in, the national brand Dove. We've had them come in and do some discussion. We've also had the national brand of the Crown Act come in. However, there's an email floating around last night to the legislators from South Dakotans for Civil Liberties, and that email classified black hairstyles as bizarre. And that word came up several times within not only testimony, but it just kind of was floating around the room beforehand. That word bizarre was floating around beforehand. So with that said, there was no discussion, and after the fact of bringing this to the 41st day, there still was no discussion on why it needed to be brought to the 41st day, outside of one comment saying that they didn't feel it was necessary because we have the EEOC, and that can be found online. So the EEOC, for those who don't know, is an employment protection, equal opportunity employment protection that's offered by the federal government. But there are no state protections when it comes to wearing your hair in a natural state. So fast forwarding again back to my conversation after the committee hearing was over, we were having this discussion, and one of the individuals said, hey, don't feel bad about this moving to the 41st day. There are a lot of bills that move forward to the 41st day. And then he also made the statement, he said, we just couldn't see the value in having a bizarre bill put forth like this, because once you start protecting one group of people, you have to start protecting all. Well, isn't that what we're here for? Number one, isn't that what we're here for? Aren't we here to protect all people? But particularly when a group of people come up to you to say, hey, we need this protection because this is what's been happening to us in the workplace, you say no. to that. You don't even have a conversation about that. That was red flag number one. But my response to him, and this was a response, an impassionate response, I should say. When he told me that I shouldn't be concerned, I told him that I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned at all. As a matter of fact, I am enlightened, and I told him that I was also encouraged because I will be back next year. We'll be fighting for the same bill and many others next year, and I plan to do so in his seat. That's not saying that I'm running for office, but I'm definitely giving it a stronger consideration right now, just simply because of kind of this hands-on experience has been drastically different than any other legislative experience that I've had. Now, with that said, I'm not committing to running for office. There's a lot of unknowns right now with my family, with our business. There's just a lot of unknowns that I have to take care of in my personal life. My wife and I have to take care of in our personal lives before we make a decision like that. But it definitely did encourage me to say, if I'm not going to run for office, then we need to find people who will run for office. And I'm not talking about just any people running for office. I'm talking about black and brown folks standing up and running for office. So I'm doing this update to give you kind of an update on that particular bill. In a minute, I'm gonna talk about two other workforce development bills that were proposed, that got shot down, and who the opponents were, who were against that bill, and how we really need to watch for those players in our community and how they act and how they basically control our day-to-day lives with these types of policies and regulations that don't provide safety for workers. And then so I'll talk about that in a minute, but what I wanted to get back to was, what does it look like? What does it look like if we actually took over Pierre? What if it looked like if Native Americans, our indigenous brothers and sisters, black folks, brown folks, Asian folks, what does it look like, Hispanic folks, what does it look like if we all said, we're done and we're going to run for office, we're going to take your position because you're not fighting for us. Now, we can have our civil discourse amongst our communities, and we're not going to always agree. As a matter of fact, of course, just all black people in black communities don't disagree, just like any other community. That is what it is. However, when I sat in front of that committee today and I saw all 9 of those individuals were white men, and I can guarantee you that the average age was 70 years old. None of them relate to us. None of them understand us, nor do they want to have the ability to understand us. They kept using the word constituents, but they don't necessarily represent us. So what does it look like if we took over Pierre? Right? What does it look like if we only had 2 of those individuals sitting on that committee, and then the rest of us would be able to engage in that civil discourse and some of those conversations and ask the right questions to people so that we can actually get legislation passed? It's not about what they think as committee members, it's about what we are able to do as a community. And so this is a call out. This is a call out. Call out to people who may not have any interest in politics whatsoever, but you do have an interest in living your day-to-day life, and you have an interest in the way your family, your children, your spouse, your mom, your dad, how you have an interest in how they live their day-to-day lives. And right now, we are allowing other people to control our lives with the decision that they make. Like, there's this perception about controlling what you can control. And today was very eye-opening for me, because we don't control a lot. We don't control a lot. Which leads me into the conversation of the 2 bills, the 2 other bills that I wanted to update you on. One bill was really giving consideration to the workers to say, hey, if there's an injury at work, Right now, currently, you have 3 days to report that injury to your employer. The consideration that was proposed was to change 3 days to 15 days. Very simple, just to give the workers enough time to say, hey, maybe I didn't feel anything yesterday, but I'm feeling it today, and I'm past that 3-day time frame. I need to make sure my employer knows, so that I can file a workman's comp claim. That also got moved to the 41st day. Now, those who were in favor of it were workers, and we're not just talking about your average day-to-day workers. We're talking about unionized workers. We're talking about police officers. We're talking about firefighters. As a matter of fact, one of the individuals that testified was a retired law enforcement officer of 19 years. You know, we're talking about our day-to-day heroes out here, right? We're talking about these hands-on type workers. They were in favor of this bill. As a matter of fact, I didn't prepare to speak on behalf of this bill, but I definitely did. As a law enforcement officer for over 13 years, I definitely understood the importance behind extending that, especially after the crash that I was involved in. You know, after 3 days, there were new injuries that came up, or new things started to hurt. But the fight was not with the legislators. The fight was with those who were opposing the bill, and that was South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, very surprisingly, the South Dakota Retailers Association. There were a couple of insurance attorneys. There were a couple of business attorneys that were representing the chambers of commerce. And so you talk about these large business entities that were there to cover the butts of the business, but not cover the butts of the workers. And so one thing that Inca and I have always heavily relied on is the humanization of the workers. Yes, we have a business, but we don't have any production from our business without the workforce, without the family members that we have hired. And so if you are not protecting your workers, if you are not treating your workers fairly, if you're not providing that type of equal level of protection under the law for your workforce, then you're going to continue to have a high turnover rate over and over and over again. And so that was actually brought up, that turnover rate. A lot of people praise South Dakota for having one of the lowest unemployment rates, but we have the second highest turnover rate in the entire country at 3.27%. So yes, people will go to a job, but they'll leave a job because of whatever conditions that job place or that workplace has set, whether it's a culture, a poor culture, whether it is, again, like the safety mechanisms in place, or whether it's the laws that we have in place that we cannot seem to be considerate enough to pass on behalf of the workers. And so time and time again, I saw where those entities that I just named got up and was able to sway the individuals sitting on that committee. And it didn't take much effort. It didn't take much effort at all. You're talking about, college educated individuals, of course. And, don't get me wrong, those individuals are also workers. They're employed by someone. And so, yes, they're doing the job that they were hired to do. But the job that they were hired to do is to protect the employer and to protect the insurance companies, and to protect certain memberships that the businesses are in. And so not once, not one time did any of those entities speak to the value of their employee. Not one time. That was never considered. And so that eye-opening experience that I refer to is not just the process of politics and not just the engagement of more individuals, because it takes more than that. It takes more than someone coming up year after year putting themselves out there to testify in front of a committee that's very intimidating, by the way. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. But what it's really going to take is us stepping into our courage, stepping into the unknown, and getting those people out of position. And I'm not talking about just voting for somebody else. I'm talking about running for office ourselves. I'm talking about running for office ourselves. What would this world look like if we designed it? Simple question. What would this world look like if we designed it? Not only if we designed it, what if we created the game and we set the rules to the game? This world will be more equitable. But right now, it's in a place to where it only benefits one group of people because they designed the game. They set the rules. They don't allow expansion of the rules. So it's time for infiltration is really what it's time for. I kind of liken it to law enforcement. There's a lot of things within law enforcement that our community does not agree with, black or white, because the majority of people in our country are considered to be poor, right? Poor and middle class individuals. Those are the individuals who deal with law enforcement the most. And so, the majority of people are unhappy with the direction of law enforcement. However, that same majority has no control because there's lack of engagement to that level, right? To that level. So you can say something, you can feel like you're doing something, but until you actually are in position to hold power, right? Power to set forth an agenda that goes against someone else's agenda, now we are actually involving in a healthy civil discourse. And that's the way our country is designed to work. That's the way our country was designed to work, I should say. Right now, it's not working as designed because we on our end won't get involved. We've been scared for a long time, and I'm just going to put this out there. And I'm speaking directly to black folks. We've been scared for a long time, y'all. We've been scared for a long time. I won't say this, or I won't say that, or I won't go here or go there, because what's going to happen when I go back to work? How are people going to look at me when I go back to work? Or we say the thing about how those who actually are involved, and I've heard this for myself, those who actually are involved make it very difficult for us when we go back to work, right? I'm not following this type of passion because my passion is politics. I'm following this because my passion is people, particularly black people. And so when I'm up here in peer fighting for legislation, again, it's not because I enjoy going through this process. I don't enjoy walking up those stairs and being ignored at all. I get no fulfillment out of doing that. I don't enjoy sitting in front of a committee. Like a couple years ago, we testified with the education committee, or in front of the education committee, when they were trying to remove black history and indigenous history out of the schools, which, by the way, they have successfully done. But I didn't get any enjoyment when the committee chair turned his back on me as I was testifying, and how myself and a friend of mine were testifying, and there were side conversations from the committee happening during our testimony. I don't enjoy being disrespected to that level, but I enjoy the process of helping my people. And for me, again, the eye-opening thing for me today was that this is step one of many. Showing up, testifying, having those conversations with people over and over again, year after year. That's step one of many. The next step is that we need to make sure that we engage. And I'm not talking about just me running for office again. I'm not sure that I could put myself in a position to do so because of my personal things that are happening right now. But I promise you this: if I get my stuff together, when I get my stuff together personally, I'm gonna be running for office, and I expect a lot of black and brown folks to be running for office right alongside me. I don't care if you're running for the same seat. We need to flood. When I say flood, we need to flood our state with opportunities to vote for us, to engage with us. We always want to say how we want to be part of the decision-making process. We want a seat at the table. In order to have a seat at the table, you must engage. You must engage. You must do something. It goes beyond just saying something. You must do something. And so this is a call to action. This is a call to action to my community, my friends, my family. Listen, I don't care if you don't know a single thing about politics. You can learn. You can learn. We're all intelligent people, most of us. Let me clarify that. Most of us are intelligent enough to be able to sit up here and learn. And I clarify that because maybe this is a joke. Maybe it's not a joke. I don't know. It's coming at the right moment for me. Some of the people that I dealt with in Pierre definitely didn't seem to be intelligent. They didn't seem to have that level of intelligence to where they can understand a different perspective. And so what I know is that black and brown folks have been forced every day of their lives to understand someone else's perspective just to fit in. That's what I know. So I'm asking you to start thinking differently. Starting today, start thinking differently, because the time is coming up on us to where seats were open on city councils, seats were open for the position of mayor, county commission. Those are your day-to-day engagement type positions. But don't get it twisted. The folks in Pierre that are state senators and state representatives and the Secretary of State's office, the Treasurer's office, all of those positions are elected positions. Those are elected officials. And we need to make sure that we have engagement with all of them. We need to make sure we're pushing them to their limits. And we need to make sure that if they are not the right person, we're not just voting them out, we're replacing them with people like us, people that look like us, people that think like us. And for those who are allies, I definitely appreciate everything that you do. This is not to disengage with you whatsoever, but this is a message to black and brown folks. But one thing that I will say is those who are proposing legislation on our behalf up here, that goes beyond allyship. Those are accomplices. Those are people that are willing to put their lives and their livelihood on the line for the things that we're doing. So they are acting as well. And a lot of the times, they're acting with more courage on our behalf than we have for ourselves. And for me, that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because they have, as much knowledge as they could possibly gain. They will all tell you that they don't have the experience of being black and brown in this world. They're just doing the best that they can do. And so my ask of you is that based on your experience of living as a black or brown person in this world, that you do the best that you can do as well. And that means stepping out of your comfort zone, being engaged in politics, because these people are literally making decisions that will affect you tomorrow and will affect the next generation of your family members. So consider that. I don't know what my next step is going to be. I know I'm continuing to lobby on behalf of the NAACP. I'm going to try to keep everybody up to date on the things that I will be doing. I haven't been doing a terribly good job at, keeping folks up to date on the things that I'm doing in the community. I try to get better at that, but I'm not going to be. I have to stop being shy and putting myself in front of the camera. I remember when I was running for office, that was the most uncomfortable thing that I could have done. Like, I love talking about the issues. I love proposing ideas for solutions, but I was very uncomfortable being in front of the camera. And JJ Johnson with Black Card Inc., she did my marketing for me, because we keep it black owned. And she's incredibly talented, of course. But she kept trying to put me in front of the camera, and I see why. I saw it at the time, because I was trying to kind of sell myself, as a candidate. But I also see why now, to a certain to a different level, or to a different degree, that being in front of this camera might be uncomfortable for me, but it's necessary for others. And so if I'm asking you to step out of your comfort zone, then my promise to you is that I'm going to do the same. I'm going to be in front of this camera much more often, giving you updates. I don't know, it might be in the car like this, it might be in a setting where I got a little drop screen behind me or whatever, but I'm going to try to update y'all on the things that are happening across our city, our county, our state, and even nationally. I hate to call this like a podcast, but it's gonna be like a little mini podcast. We're gonna sit up here, we're gonna chop it up. When I started this particular video, I was like, man, I hope I got 5 minutes of substance to say to people. But now I look at the time on the camera, I've been talking for over 30 minutes. So hopefully you got something from this. Ask me questions. Let's engage in conversation. If you're interested in running for office, or if you're interested in even knowing what that looks like, reach out to me. I'm going to probably be reaching out to some folks as well. I have an idea that I want to run past a few people about, maybe having a standing meeting for people just to come in and engage in what the process looks like, and even preparing for like testimony and things of that nature. I have an idea to run through our nonprofit, which is the Hub South Dakota. But engaging in some of those professional practices is going to be key, especially when it comes to controlling business entities across our state. Again, we think we control everything, but the policies that are created in PR is really what controls what you can and cannot do in your own business. So keep all that in mind. I'll keep you up to date. I appreciate you for listening so long. I won't keep you any longer. And I'll end it just like one of my favorite radio hosts does. Her name is Karen Hunter. If you don't know Karen Hunter, please look her up. But she always says, remember, love is an action word. Go out and show somebody today that you love them. I love y'all.